Jane, are you ready? And Deb, are you ready? Wonderful. Okay, good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, January 17th, 2024, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered on a best effort for the public. Our meeting is also live streamed and you can join us online by going to our website. Live stream is also available at tctvonline.com and click on live broadcasts. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute your phones. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted with their cameras turned off. Thank you. Public comment. Those intending to provide public comment to the board may attend in person or email submissions to public comments email on our website. Public comments received by 12 p.m. on Tuesday will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become part of the public record. You may also provide public comment virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email public comments by 12 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the board meeting. Public comments can also be mailed to the Board of Commissioners office at 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon, 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. Do we have anyone signed up online for public comment? Okay, nor in the room. All right, thank you. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone, invite our guests to sign the guest list, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Stark, will you lead us, please?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Well, moving on in our agenda, we don't have any public comment, and we do have one non-agenda item, unscheduled item. We will take before item 5 on the agenda, and so that means first. So we'll start out with the unscheduled item, which is consideration of an order in the matter of declaring a local emergency within Tillamook County. And with us, we have Randy Thorpe, our Director of Emergency Management. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning, Commissioners. Well, what we have before us is our local declaration for emergency. Normally, these would have happened a few days ago, but because of the storm and because of the accessibility of getting together as a commission, I talked with Commissioner Bell and we decided to put off the actual signing until today. I have contacted the state and we put in a verbal declaration a couple of days ago. And so we're into the system. This just we'll go ahead and give them the written copy of our declaration. You may wonder why declarations. A lot of it is just so we can divert funds if we have to within our county to help take care of the situations that we need, because sometimes the budgets of the Public Works Department may get depleted fairly rapidly through any type of emergency like this. The other important thing is that it kind of opens up that door for us to start requesting any type of state assistance and during an emergency. And I know that the governor's got a couple of things that she's considering putting into executive order, and we want to make sure that she puts Tillamook County in on those executive orders. So that's the main reasons why we want to do a declaration. And the biggest thing is just, again, it raises up public awareness of the issues that we're dealing with here in this county. It also lets other counties know and the state know that we are dealing with some major issues here in the county. Just because we can take care of it and we seem to do that quite well, we need to make sure people understand that it was a major emergency for us this weekend. So anyway, with that, we do need to put a deadline on, and we have looked at, I think noon today is what we decided to have the expiration of the declaration. We just have to put in an end date. It basically is covering the period of January 13th through today, the 17th. Now, if we continue to have issues throughout the county, we can definitely extend this declaration out. But I think we just need to wait and see what happens after today. And then if we need to, we can go in and just do an amendment like what we did during, I guess, COVID, and kept extending out the declaration. So anyway, I think it's a really good, puts us in a good position, I think, with the state to get a declaration put into place for this county. And I'm hoping that the next stage that we do, that this also comes in as we're into the recovery stage now. And so we'll be doing a lot of damage assessments over the next couple of weeks. And again, having a declaration in place will assist if once we start identifying some damages and the extent of the damages. Right now, we're not sure what the extent of the damages are because people are still cutting branches and everything else. So, but I did notice just offhand that Tillamook PUD has really stepped up, and I think most people in the county are at least with power right now. So that's a good thing. The other thing that the declaration helps with is that we did have a shelter opened up here in Tillamook with CARE and at St. Albans Church, but they were running into issues with some staffing. And so by having a declaration, I was able to contact the state, and then I put CARE in touch with those individuals to where there could have been some additional help coming in from other groups from the state. So again, that's the main reasons with that, is it just opens up those doors and allows us to bring in some additional resources if necessary. So with that, any more questions? And I thought we were done with weather, so don't ask me about that. But apparently we are still seeing a lot of residual ice throughout the county. So I just want to stand on that little soapbox for a minute and tell everybody be careful out there and only drive, with necessary, and definitely do not try to go into Willamette Valley this day. So any other questions that the commissioners have concerning the
Commissioners?
order?
No questions, but just, as those who were listening on the radio yesterday heard us talk about how thankful we are for our emergency manager, for the emergency response teams everywhere that were a part of this response. Our EMS was out there very busily. I think we were talking about ambulance yesterday, and I think Eric said they did 177 calls or something like that. That was, maybe 50 more than a normal weekend. So it was a lot of activity, a lot of response. Similarly with our law enforcement, that might have been the law enforcement number.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I may have those backwards, but it was a significant increase over our normal weekend of services for our EMS, for our law enforcement responders. I mean, everybody was doing double duty. So just a lot of thanks go out to everyone who does go out on the roads when we, are asking everyone to stay home. There are always folks whose job it is to keep doing that work. And we're very thankful for all of those who participated. Just before the meeting, we were talking also about our communications work, and we are thankful for all of our different communications folks, whether it's, the Headlight Herald, the Pioneer, the radios, folks, we're able to get information out to people in our community. And that's really important. It supports keeping people off the roadways. It supports people making good decisions. So I think we're just very thankful for everyone who did this work. I'm happy that we are doing an emergency declaration. There are some funds that are coming through the Houseless Network that can help support CARE with some of the staffing they did have to use this weekend. And this emergency declaration supports the use of those funds for warming shelter. That is not traditionally what they are intended for, but we did receive a communication from Oregon Housing and Community Services indicating they could use that. The support of the emergency declaration is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. I too would second what has been said about our first responders and emergency provider. Some of you know for 15 years I served on the PUD board and became pretty familiar with what those folks do in inclement weather. In fact, one time I received a call from someone, and this happened to be in the summertime, where this individual had driven by a couple of work crews that were taking their afternoon break in the summer, and they were all sitting down and having a soda pop or whatever they did. And he wanted to know why the people were sitting down on the job and not working. And my answer was, I wonder if you've seen them in the middle of January at midnight up in a windstorm on a pole. Goes both ways, for sure. So I appreciate what they do as well. The only question I have, when the county, and certainly has the authority to do this, declares an emergency as we're doing this morning, has that ever been questioned or rejected? Not necessarily us, but from other counties. Has the state ever said, well, you were too eager, or you didn't follow procedures? Or in other words, have we had 100% success or not? Or does anyone know? Maybe that's never been an issue. Just occurred to me that maybe some counties jumped the gun, not here, but.
No, that the only issue that happens is that according, and our council did point that out, that there is some requirements by law of what has to be put into an emergency declaration. And so that's the only thing that I've seen, is sometimes they like the wording a little different in order to match what legally needs to be put in it. And so, and that's one reason is why I rely quite heavily on Bill to make sure that that sort of thing is put into our declaration, so we don't have that issue. But right now, I'm not aware of, usually the state is very good at letting the counties and the local municipalities make those decisions themselves and don't try to second guess whether or not there should have been or should not have been. My time is short here, but I have never heard of that, and I've never heard anybody around that's complained, is that they do trust the ability for the counties and the communities to make those decisions for the local needs.
As they should. Thank you. That's all, Commissioner.
I wonder if Bill would talk about the requirements.
They're within the order before you, but I wanted to follow up for the Commissioner Olson. In my tenure, I've never seen the state not follow up on a local emergency declaration like this. And I got to say, the last one that she did, which seemed like a month or so ago for the floods, I got to admit, I was going like, really, an emergency? Well, it didn't take too long for me to figure out, well, yeah, it really was an emergency. There were bridges and culverts, and you guys know all about that. So anyway, no, they've never said, you guys are over there just declaring emergencies because you got, you think you have an emergency,
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Although they do seem like maybe they're coming up a little bit more often than they did historically for one reason or another.
Well, it's my experience with emergencies that as Randy said, it makes it available to us to obtain certain kinds of funding that wouldn't be otherwise available. And I'm glad that funding will be available for CARE. I think that's terrific. There was, through the ice storm, CARE was doing an outstanding job of staffing the warming center. And I just really want to give a shout out to those folks, some of whom are staff who had to brave the ice storm to get to the warming shelter, but also a lot of volunteers were braving the ice storm in order to get to the warming center so that people would have a safe, warm place to be. And I'm really grateful for that compassion and that spirit of service that got people out in the ice to take care of their neighbors who are houseless. So I'm grateful for that, and very grateful for PUD's work. They just did an outstanding job, as usual, as always, getting power back. And I echo my fellow commissioners' thanks to all the emergency responders and everybody who worked so hard to get us through this latest emergency, including Randy. So, well done on keeping the lines of communication open. That's been one of our goals, is to have more and better communication, and that's happening. So I appreciate your efforts in that. All right, well, I think we are ready for an order.
Motion. Okay. Madam Chair, consideration of Board Order number 24-004 in the matter of declaring a local emergency within Tillamook County. I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And,
Thank you, Randy.
I'll get this off to the state to get put into the system today. So
Terrific.
I
And for-
appreciate it.
For folks who are watching live stream, wondering about roads, Randy and I worked together yesterday with Chris Leahy and, or actually the day before yesterday, and Under Sheriff Kelly to decide whether or not the county would be closed yesterday. And I appreciate the effort that goes into that decision. And this morning, as I was driving to work, I felt completely justified in that decision, because for people who haven't ventured out yet, North 101 for me from Nehalem to Tillamook was perfectly clear. However, Highway 53 was an icy mess, and I slid around even with studded tires. So that's unusual. And I'm not the only person in the room who had trouble driving on ice to get in this morning. So if you're watching live streamed and you have the option of staying home, you may want to stay home at least until this afternoon, because if the higher temperatures could persist and the rain continues, it will just keep melting. So continue to stay safe, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if I can get up.
Okay, we'll move on to item 5, which is consideration of a personal services agreement with Ready Group for a public health modernization community assessment and improvement plan. And with us, we have Marlene Putman, Director of Health and Human Services. Good morning.
Good morning. Glad that everybody made it safely, even though it was slippery, it sounds like.
Thank you.
This is an agreement, as indicated, with, I think they're called the Reed Group, for a total of $79,600. The term is retroactive to November 1 of 2023 through May 31 of 2024. We began work with the Reed Group with public health modernization beginning in 2023 to address the 4 program core areas that the state of Oregon has asked public health departments to address. And they include climate change / environmental health, I guess, / extreme weather related events, which we've been seeing more recently. The second one is emergency preparedness, again, could be related to the former. Third is culture / equity and access. And the fourth is communicable disease. So with this contract and the related scope of work, the Reed Group will be gathering, analyzing, and sharing community input in these 4 areas with a focus on addressing the disparities among the identified vulnerable populations in each of these areas. So we're going to build on our 2023 emergency and natural disaster preparedness community assessment and do 2 phases of work. The first phase is November through March, and the second phase is March through May of 2023. Phase 1 is gathering more information on the communication strategies from identified populations. We worked with both the first communications plan for staff, community partners, to identify who we would be doing outreach to in phase 1, which will include 1 to 3 virtual project planning meetings with our internal team. And they will develop a secondary documents and data to support the analysis, and take that data to create some tools to communicate with our community through surveys, focus groups, and individual interviews. Those will be in Spanish and English. We will collaborate with identified 6 partner organizations that serve the vulnerable populations, and do the surveys and one-on-one interviews with those partners. And we will conduct a total of 12 to 18 virtual interviews with community-based organizations that serve these populations. And then we'll be doing some individual incentivized one-on-ones with individuals with $25 to $50 gift cards with access to local services. So all of that, there's a few other components associated with it to create a report and recommendations on communication strategies, on service strategies that we'll share with our partners, as well as with the development of our modernization plan. So in phase 2, that draft of the plan will be created for our 2023-24 emergency natural disaster preparedness, community assessments and response, to give us a plan for our next 2 years. Further, we will have a summary report of all of the listening sessions and from attendees and input that we received. We can share that also with our partners if they would like to use that to inform any of their decision making. So the funding from this comes from funds that were appropriated by the legislature to support public health modernization. We do not know whether there will be an additional appropriation for these funds in the future, but hope so, to continue the modernization work. This is to continue to make sure that public health, both state and locally, really is relevant as we see increasing impacts with weather-related events, communicable diseases like COVID and community response, and maybe even the need to adopt those strategies across our county and with contiguous counties to address those vulnerable populations that struggle to find a safe place to stay, to shelter, and to get the resources they need. So that's the broad picture of this proposal, which we expect to, again, incorporate in our strategic plan, our communications plan, our equity inclusion plan, and submit our report to the state of Oregon on modernization. It won't be just a planning document. We will be implementing strategies with funding that we receive through other grants, as well as services within the department. So again, the total amount is for $79,600 with the regroup from November 1, 23 through May 31 of 2024. And that's for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners?
I don't have any questions. I think Marlene did a good job of laying this out. The public health modernization process started, I think, it isn't just this 23-25 biennia. It actually started, I think, the biennia before that, if I'm not mistaken. And it was when the state of Oregon took a really solid look at public health, at how they had funded it historically, and really began to understand that they had underfunded it historically. So this is a big process. It is a long-term process that is driven at the state level as to the requirements that we do these types of plans, that we do this outreach in our community. It's wonderful. It's been long needed and never funded. So it's a great project for us. I think we're going to learn a lot about the needs in our community and the best ways to improve our services, increase our services to meet them. So it's amazing, and it is state driven and state funded. So if people are wondering why we spend this type of money on outreach and planning, don't we need to just be offering services? This is a requirement for us to continue to receive and hopefully receive additional funds to expand the services. So Marlene, I know the Reed Group has done some great work for you already, and I look forward to this particular process and the feedback we can get from it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. My only question is, you said the state funds it. Does this apply to all the health departments across the state, similarly situated to what we are, or is this specific to here and you, or could you speak to that? And other than that, I have absolutely no questions or problems. It looks like a great way forward, and the money's coming from the state, but I am interested if it's statewide.
Yes, so the funding that was appropriated for public health modernization is statewide. Each county receives an allocation of funds. There's a base fund plus a percent based on population and other equity factors or risk factors. So each county then has to submit a strategy or a plan of how they expect to address those 4 components I mentioned. and then what they're going to fund with it. So right now it's statewide, and all counties are opting in to do this modernization work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. I don't have any questions. I'm fully supportive and also grateful that the work is funded by the state. So
Perfect.
I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of a personal services agreement with Reed Group for a public health modernization, community assessment and improvement plan, I would move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Item 6 is consideration of a non-prevailing wage rate construction contract with Eurotech USA, Inc. for the Blaine Road Milepost 10.3 Culvert Repair Project. With us, we have Chris Laity, Director of Public Works.
Good morning, Commissioners. So prior to my taking employment with Tillamook County as Public Works Director, I also served as a county on-call engineer for a variety of counties that were too small to actually be able to employ an actual county engineer full-time. Went through a storm event, a FEMA declared storm event back in 2011. In that event, we shut down a bridge. It had dropped by 3 feet. We looked at a variety of options on how to make improvements to this bridge. We ended up using the structural polyurethane with Eurotech, and we were able to inject this polyurethane into the ground, subsequently raising the road up by 3 feet. So when you look at this type of product, you'll see a lot of homeowners use spray foam insulation around the windows. It expands outwards. And as it expands outwards, it does, in the case of that bridge, create some structural strength to it. It also, the structural polyurethane that we're looking at doing here has been applied a number of times on raising the road elevation. You'll see in commercials where if your sidewalk settles, you can come in and inject this polyurethane upwards. That is not the same level as what we're doing here. So you'll see that we reached out to a variety of companies to identify people that could do that. Eurotech does this on the infrastructure capacity, do work with a lot of DOTs. So Blaine, which is Upper Nestucca at milepost 10.3, it's a fish ladder pipe. And it's fish friendly pipe. And what we've been seeing over a period of time is that the road will settle, we patch it, the road settles, it gets patched. So oftentimes what happens is water starts to seep its way around the outside of the culvert. It's no longer inside, it's on the outside. So as it's on the outside, sorry about that. As it's on the outside of the pipe, it starts washing some of the soils around it. Subsequently, it no longer has capacity. Nothing's holding that pipe in ground. That's why it'll continue to drop to fill the voids. What this product does, which is we looked at a variety of options, and what we intend to do is drill holes on either side of that pipe in an array fashion. And then we'll inject rods into at various depths. This foam insulation, which isn't insulation, is structural polyurethane. It's also, it doesn't matter about water, it can be applied in the wet. It's also fish friendly. So as it goes down with various depths, this is injected and it starts to fill all the voids. It continues to, just like it does around your windows, it'll continue to expand. Again, this is a structural polyurethane, unlike what you're used to doing. And what this will do is it'll fill the voids and stop the water from migrating around the pipe, subsequently it'll fill all those voids, encapsulating this pipe. It also prevents the water from coming in around the outside of the pipe. And with that, it will, we can raise the road, whatever level we want to raise the road to. So it's also a leveler and it fills the void so we have no water coming through. We are looking at contract with Eurotech for $39,750. Are there any questions?
That is so interesting. So do you have any pictures of that site?
I was looking for some good pictures. Unfortunately, I do not have any good pictures. We've patched it, and subsequently what you're seeing is it's a road that's been patched and patched and patched. So you just don't really see it today, but it will continue to drop and drop. So It's one where if you're driving down the road and all of a sudden there's a little dip right there, there's a high likelihood that there's a culvert under there, and there's a high likelihood that some of that settled. You'll see this on 101. Anything along the coast, you'll see that little settlement around a pipe. We cross a lot of bridges every day that you're probably not aware of. A lot of culverts. Again, we have 4,000 culverts that we manage in Tillamook County. ODOT manages 40,000 across the entire state. So they manage that. We manage 10% of the total that they manage. There's a lot of varieties that we deal with. It's not everything you can tear out and replace. Nor is it worth the money and the effort to do that. Where a simple repair can be done. Sometimes you replace a pipe. Sometimes the pipe becomes a bridge. Sometimes the pipe becomes a bigger pipe. So a lot of different tools in the toolbox. This is just one of those tools.
Thank you.
No good pictures though, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
Well, Chris, this is interesting. Is this intended to be a time limited repair, like, or is this something that in lieu of replacing the culvert or making it a bridge, this injection would give us, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, forever? Talk a little bit about that.
This will outlast the usefulness of that pipe. So
Okay.
pipes, you're typically looking about 20, 25-year lifespan on that. Possibly 50 years plus. It kind of depends on that, on the pipe, the circumstances. You get into the upper reaches where the roads start going up into the coastal range. Part of what causes the failures on that is rocks and debris that'll come down and start damaging the inside of the pipe. So on a non-fish bearing string pipe, we can go in the inside of that pipe and place a concrete mat in there, and we can do that from the inside of the pipe. It doesn't prevent the material coming around the outside. We can also do head walls and things of that nature. On a fish bearing pipe, we can't go to the inside of that pipe, otherwise we trigger fish passage requirements. This is already a fish bearing pipe. This is Hattinger Creek, by the way. In this particular case, it is, again, it's not a one size fits all. I don't know if that answered your question, Commissioner, or not.
It does. I guess my other question is, have we done this elsewhere in the county, or is this a new technology that we're using in our county, or new for us?
It's new for us. So it is, what we are seeing out there is the pipes are in such bad condition is that as you start looking at the order of priority, the real bad pipes, again, we shut down Fairview at Huey Creek because we were concerned we were going to lose that. That's now open, running really well. Just the order of priority is we still have some culverts that will become bridges. We still have some culverts that will become bigger bridges. This is one that you typically will do this, or you'll inject grout. A grout injection oftentimes will be from the inside of the pipe outwards, but it doesn't necessarily fill the voids like this does. Now, obviously, grout will be much longer lasting solution, but this structural injected polyurethane will likely outlast the culvert.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. My only comment is I'm really glad that Tillamook County employs a professional engineer. And I wonder, and this is kind of a side issue, when we conclude with this item, if we could ask our engineer to speak to some of the roads issues, or if that would be, should be done elsewhere on the agenda. I'll leave that up to the chair.
I think after we vote on this, we can absolutely ask Chris some questions while he's still on.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that to us, Chris. I think that's fascinating, and it's logical. I just never heard it before. It makes sense that to do this kind of repair rather than to dig up a failing culvert that still has some potential life in it. So that's very interesting. And I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of a non-prevailing wage rate construction contract with Eurotech USA Inc. for the Blaine Road Milepost 10.3 Culvert Repair Project, I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. All right. Thank you, Chris. I think you have the next one also. And then after item 7, if you have a minute, we'll take Doug's questions.
Sure.
So item 7 is consideration of an Oregon Department of Transportation delivered federal project on behalf of Tillamook County for the Sand Creek, Sand Lake Road, Atkinson Bridge, Tillamook County, number 11328A project. To you, Chris.
Right, so I thought this one was right there, but it's the newer system. I don't have this in front of me, so I don't have the specific numbers to it. Okay, maybe I do. So every couple of years, we apply to ODOT for some funding opportunities to help build, to replace bridge to bridge in the ODOT world. So when we do a bridge to bridge replacement, and ODOT is helping to fund it, they paid 90% and we paid 10%, depending on the color of the money. So the Atkinson Bridge is on Sand Lake Road. It's in between the T intersection of Sand Lake / Cape Lookout and the Galloway Road down by the ATV rental place. It's about halfway in between. This one is scour issues that goes underneath an abutment. This is also a situation where we start to see where the water comes in, it starts turning 90 degrees. It'll become more of an issue. It's currently not a high priority for us, but eventually it will become that way. ODOT, because it's a scour critical bridge, they want to come in there and replace the bridge. It does need to be replaced. So what this one does is this is a standard contract that we do with a lot of our bridges with ODOT. It's not a grant, it's programmatic, which means that all the different counties apply for funding, and based on the formula, it makes a determination on where do they want to actually put the money. And in this case, the Atkinson Bridge is one of those projects. They said, yes, this is where we want to fund it. Because bridges that are larger than 20 feet, of which this is it is on the National Bridge Inventory. Anything greater than 20 feet is on the National Bridge Inventory, and it's inspected every 2 years. If we, Tillamook County, a bridge less than 20 feet, the county pays, and we also do bridge inspections every 2 years as well, because we need to know the condition of our bridges. So we bring in qualified bridge inspectors, and they go through a number of courses in order to properly inventory these. So it's again, this is very programmatic. We've done quite a few of these. So I rounded, we pay 10.27%. Project cost is $3,465,500, of which we're responsible for 10.27% match.
Thank you, Chris. Well, for us, the 10% is still a lot of money, but I'm super grateful that we get the 90% funded. So it's, yeah, I think it's a wonderful opportunity.
So to add to that, when you start looking at these items, these are not built next year. So they're programming funds for the next biennium. Realistically, it might go into construction in 2028. So we do forecast these things out, because it does take time to go through all the environmental, the design. When we build a bridge in 10 days, that's unheard of. But we already had a design for that. So it just takes a while for these things to go through the process. Again, the 2015, 2016 bridge on Miami on Bay Ocean, they are scheduled for construction next summer. So that was a 2015-16, using federal highway emergency relief money. So these do take time. So 2028 would be probably a realistic time frame for this to be built.
Thank you. Commissioners?
No question. Well, maybe one question. So Chris, I remember last year as we were working with ODOT on the, I'm going to forget the cost share piece that we do with them, where we were trying to make sure that we were going to get the maintenance funding. There was a lot of talk about bridge funding, and for some counties, bridge funding worked well, and for other counties, it was a real stretch. And I recall we were one of the ones where bridge funding works pretty well. We tend to be able to partner with ODOT fairly regularly and utilize some of the bridge funding they have. Is that this program? Is that what we're talking about? That was it was talked about last year during legislative session?
So
Or
the
is this a
color of
different line?
money is what we looked
Yeah.
at. So it's on Sand Lake Road. It's a federal aid eligible road. So when we hit the
Okay.
disasters, the emergency management or the emergency declarations, you have the FEMA and the federal highway route. So the governor declared an emergency for the federal highway money. So that this is on a federal eligible route. So it is regardless of the conversations of the legislature system, legislature session, if I can say it right. This is a different color of money.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this is even better than, it's just going to take longer. It's ODOT. It just takes
Sure.
longer. But this is a good program. It's unrelated to the other one.
Thank you.
Different color of
Appreciate
money.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification. There are lots of different colors of money that come to the county for sure.
Thank you. My only, I guess, comment is anytime you can get a match of 10-1 or 9-1, it seems like we should do it, presuming it needs to be done in the first place, which I understand it does. So I support those kinds of things. And as we go through the budget again this year, I certainly want to provide everything we can to be able to take advantage of a 9-1 match. It's pretty attractive, and I'm not sure that a lot of things will go that way. And if the legislature finds themselves in a bind, or even the feds, then guess what? They begin to cut some of that back, and we don't get the use of that money. So take advantage of it when we can, I guess, is my message. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of an Oregon Department of Transportation delivered federal project on behalf of Tillamook County for the Sand Creek Sand Lake Road Atkinson Bridge, Tillamook County, number 11328A project, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. And so Commissioner Olson, what would you like to ask Chris?
Well, thank you. Simply asking, my guess is that your people have been out almost 24/7 here when we have a situation as we've had over recent days. Could you speak to what happened and maybe the worst of it, and maybe what's still on the to-do list, and give us maybe a 2 or 3 minute recap of what you folks have been doing for the last few days?
So this was an event that was, pretty well known. It did take place possibly a little later than we anticipated. We shut down the new alignment for Cape Mears Loop possibly a day earlier than maybe we needed to, but erring on the side of caution, shut that down 12% grade. When you have a flat road and there's ice on it, it's hard to stay on it even with studded tires. So we shut that one down with 12% grade. With possibly a reopening today or tomorrow. We applied de-icer quite a bit throughout the county road system. One of the problems with that, and you saw that on 101 and Highway 6, is that there's just the ice built up too fast. The de-icers, it's good up to a certain point. There's just too much ice. So ODOT County couldn't keep up with that. At some point where the de-icers are no longer effective, we started putting sand down, sanding rock. It's not actually sand, but it's sanding rock. And you saw ODOT do that on Highway 101. When we started to see the sun came out, if you had daylight and you had direct sun on it, the ice melted. If it was in the shade, it didn't melt. And this was true of ODOT county roads, city roads. Manzanita, I believe they had shut down, I think, 9 intersections. They just couldn't keep up either. So it was just too much, too fast. We had purchased some used sanding trucks from Hood River. We had a total of 4 out there with vehicles all chained up, going. We ended up applying additional sand yesterday morning for people commuting into work, because we anticipated that it wasn't Martin Luther King Day. We just took the extra step, even though we didn't see ice coming, but we knew it was going to take a while to thaw out. Currently, the roads that are going up into the coastal range, such as Upper Nestucca, which is a continuation of Blaine, the upper reach of Trask and God's Valley, some of these roads that really start stretching into the coastal range, they're taking longer to thaw out. One of the things is we've been pretty proactive in removing trees, trying to get daylight on our roads. So you'll see us doing a lot of work with our chainsaws to open that up during the fall, where we just need to get the sun on those roads. And here's a great example of why we do that. Currently, we have a couple of roads that are Bay Ocean Road had a fairly large tree that came down across it and it blocked the road. We opened that up so that you could get 14 feet through that road. Now that the ice has melted, we're actively working on that. Cape Lookout is also another road that's got a lot of mess on it. When we start reaching into some of these deeper ones, we'll see additional branches come down. All the weight of the ice was dropping branches, trees had come down. So we were really focused on making sure our large roads were open for that. So the ice is pretty much melted except for the upper reaches. So we've got foremen out on those upper reaches telling us the condition of those roads that we really were not able to get to without putting our crews in harm's way. Certainly we don't need to become victims ourselves. So hopefully that answered that question.
Thank you. Very, very clear. And I appreciate, as we said earlier, you folks don't have a luxury of taking a day off. In fact, it's just the opposite when these things happen. I'd forgotten how much you budgeted for overtime. Are we okay so far with that?
Yeah, we're fine overtime. And the biggest issue with that is we've been unable to fully staff up. So we do have positions are not paying salary. So we're not paying an engineering project manager. Hopefully we're interviewing one this afternoon. Knock on wood, maybe we'll make an offer. So we have an entire year's salary of an engineering project manager that has not been paid out. So salaries on overtime are not much of a concern for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a good report.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Okay, we'll move on to item 8, which is consideration of a State of Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Overflow Sewer and Stormwater Grant Agreement number 027-24 for the construction upgrades at the Pacific City Transfer Station. And with us, we have Justin Weiss, Interim Program Manager, Tillamook County Solid Waste. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, 2 items on the agenda this morning, so I thought I'd come say hi in person and see your faces. So thank you for having me this morning. So yes, we have a DEQ overflow stormwater grant potentially on the table here. So as you may know, we've been doing some infrastructure upgrades at the Manzanita and Pacific City transfer stations. Manzanita phase 1 is complete. We're looking to do some repairs on the east wall there, and some of these OSG funds may be made available for that as well. So that's an exciting opportunity in the future. But today we're going to be talking about Pacific City. And so the overflow and stormwater grants is for planning, designing, and construction of sanitary sewer overflows and stormwater management projects. So my understanding is that we were made aware of these funds through our application for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan application. So this is the SRF loan process, and this was initiated by my predecessor, David McCall. So these funds are in the final phases of procurement. They're going through a 30-day review process at the state level, and these SRF funds are approved for, I believe, 1.6 million in Pacific City and around 700,000 in Manzanita. So this will help get us across the finish line with some of these infrastructure upgrades. So these OSG funds were made available just going through the process of the SRF loan. This is a fairly new program to DEQ from what I understood. So this grant agreement was actually in flux and being developed as we were engaging with it. So there was a lot of back and forth with the process, but these funds were presented just as an opportunity as a rural community with a smaller population and some economic median incomes. We were granted the opportunity to apply for these. So there was no formal application process. DEQ just had some conversations with us, thought it was a good fit. And so the funds were awarded to us in the amount of what we landed on was $320,000. So these will be available for stormwater infrastructure only. So I was hoping to get maybe some coverage for the actual recycling building in Pacific City, keeping things out of the water, not letting that processed water come in touch with the recyclables, but that was not an acceptable expense. So it has to be very specifically focused on stormwater infrastructure. So that would include excuse me, downspouts and any plumbing within the building, any bioswales, infiltration swales, things like that to direct the stormwater away from the recycling area. And then also the repair and reinforcement of retaining walls. So at both locations, we're looking to expand capacity. We're having more garbage, more trash come in during COVID. We saw that spike and it hasn't really dropped as much as we anticipated. So we do want to build these up in terms of having a nice solid infrastructure there and then increasing capacity as well. So a big portion of the funds, the 320, will go towards expanding and reinforcing the failing retaining wall. So that's about 230,000 of the 320. $20,000 would go towards some grant assistance with reimbursements, having someone assist with a lot of the moving parts and getting that submitted to DEQ for reimbursement. And then $70,000 I allocated for services and supplies. So this would be some of the bioswales, the infiltration swales, things of that nature. So initially there was a 20% match on this grant. As they're going through the process, they said this was in flux, a lot of things changing. DEQ and working with DEQ at the federal level, EPA at the federal level and DEQ at the state level. They finally landed on a 44% match for the loans. So a little bit higher match, but we are using the SRF loan funds. And that was the justification behind that, because we're using a loan as matching funds. They upped that percentage a little bit, but we're looking to use all these funds for this infrastructure, and this grant money is going to be awarded to us. No repayment, things of that nature. It is a grant, so great opportunity to help pad the budget for this infrastructure upgrades. So the SRF loans will be probably coming before you for finalization in February. So we're just getting these all kind of lined up and ready for hopefully construction in the spring. One thing I did want to note is, because again, this was an agreement that was back and forth a lot, we did have a narrative contained in here that had some dates that one has passed as of December 31st. The other one's coming up at the end of the month. So I did talk with DEQ because it's something I did notice within the last few days in preparation for this. So they said it should be a simple amendment. There should be no problem with extending the dates. We have until June of 2026 to expend the funds, the $320,000. But I would leave it up to you commissioners to decide. She said we could sign it today and do an amendment after, or if you felt more comfortable having the dates that are farther out and actually realistic targets, we could do the amendment and I could bring it back before you for a final signature. So that was just something I wanted to note in terms of finalizing it and signing it. But I think I've touched on a lot of the points and would be happy to answer any questions if you do have any.
Thank you, Justin. I will leave the question of whether we should sign it today and amend it thereafter, or amend it first and sign it, up to Rachel and or Bill. What do you guys recommend?
I think it's fine either way. If we can, I always try to do less paperwork. So if we can just do one that covers it, I would lean towards that, but I don't think it really matters. It sounds like DEQ is flexible in our approach. So whatever Justin would recommend, maybe.
Yeah, they've been quite flexible, great to work with in terms of making it work for us and having calls and walking us through this process. So like I said, I think we have till June. We do have until June of 2026, and that should be plenty of time. I'm hoping to really jump on this and get it going and have it ending kind of completed construction by spring of 2025. So that still leaves us a whole year of a contingency and room. So I would, and just in terms of what the other loans that are coming down the pipeline, I would love to get this signed and then just kind of keep things moving along. So that would probably be my recommendation there.
Thank you.
And I was thinking, Commissioner Bill. Probably nothing's gonna change, but.
Okay, great. Thank
I
you.
think I go along.
Thank you. And Chris just popped on. Chris, did you want to speak to this?
Right. I would recommend signing this and do an amendment later. Justin, we did have one person in solid waste out for the month of December. Justin ended up playing dual duties. He was actually a transfer station, not only the interim solid waste manager, but he was also a transfer station attendant because we just needed him to fill that seat. So this is something ideally we would have had done back in December. Obviously, December kept my time was pretty occupied in December, and Justin was wearing multiple hats. So while DEQ is patient with us, this is one that we really wanted to get to the board earlier. Just our staffing availability didn't. So I would recommend signing this and do an amendment after, down the road.
Thank you. Well, then it's unanimous. And I want to take a moment to thank you both for doing double and probably sometimes triple duty. And I hope that the staffing problem with solid waste is resolved and you're no longer a full-time transfer station attendant as well as interim manager.
It was nice to get out back in the field. It has been a while, but so much to do on the computer here and in that realm. So yeah, she is back from leave and we are fully staffed. So
good, glad to hear it. And thanks for moving this project forward and keeping us updated on it. I had been thinking about it and wondering about it because, as you said, your predecessor, Dave McCall, started this. It seems like a year ago, some time ago. And it was exciting at the time for the reasons you just described, because there was grant money available and there was also a very low interest loan available for the matching funds. So that's what makes it possible for us to do the infrastructure upgrade in Pacific City and Manzanita. So I'm very happy that this is moving forward and I thank you for carrying it. I thank you for your leadership in this role.
Thank you for that. I do think it is crucial for the infrastructure moving forward. So I want to keep it going along. Yeah.
Great. Commissioners?
No questions, just agreeance that I'm thankful that this is moving forward and appreciate the work to get our infrastructure up to snuff at our transfer stations. I think it's one of the challenges we face as a county is that we have a lot of infrastructure. When you look at our balance sheet and you look at the assets on our balance sheet, it covers a lot of facilities, the transfer stations being part of that. So there's just a lot to think about in county facilities. So I appreciate you thinking about the solid waste facilities and making sure that they are where they need to be so that we don't have to worry about that. And I appreciate the amount of grant funding that is coming in, the forgivable loans that are being used as match. That's another amazing piece that your predecessor found for us. So I think, that's just all really, really helpful. I think the other thing it's always good to talk about is that solid waste is a special revenue fund, and the funding that comes into solid waste through the transfer station and the work that is done at the transfer station is what funds that for the most part, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's always good to just recognize that while you are part of the county, there is a financial aspect that is a standalone aspect that means that you all have to function in many ways as a business would function. So there's an additional, pressure that sits there with the financial work that's done. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Thank you. Just a couple of comments and a question. I'm pretty familiar with that. My wife and I are pretty regular users of the transfer station in Pacific City. Some years ago, I visited Cardam and some of the things up north, so I'm familiar with that part of the system. So I'm in full support of this. So my question is, having been on the JWSA board some years back, you're talking about the storm sewer as being in a bioswale and so on. That's where the runoff would go for that. And the sanitary sewer, you're really not connected to JWSA. Isn't there a porta potty up there?
Correct.
And that's basically how that's handled. So JWSA has not extended out there over the years. Have you had any conversations with their board or general manager to do that? And I'm thinking not only where you are, but just down the road where the Adventist clinic is. I think they're on a self-contained system, as I recall, too.
Yeah, Commissioner Olson, to my knowledge, I don't know if there's any conversations regarding that. I do know both transfer stations do not have any sewer lines flowing in and out. And so I know there was talks in Manzanita, maybe running a sewer line, and just the amount of the property owners and the cost. And we have a porta potty on site there as well. It just didn't make sense financially. So Pacific City, we are hoping to put a building and a more permanent infrastructure, but to my knowledge, there hasn't been in the past or during this design process any talks of extending or adding any sewer lines there. So.
Thank you. I will comment when we go up there, my wife and I, and she goes more often than I do. I can't recall a time when there were not other people offloading stuff. So, even with limited hours, it's heavily used, and there seems to always be 2 or 3 cars or trucks that are pitching their waste material in one bin or the other. So, that's how we do it and it works. And I think what you're proposing here makes a great deal of sense.
Great, thank you. I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of State of Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Overflow Sewer and Stormwater Grant Agreement number 027-24 for construction upgrades at the Pacific City Transfer Station, I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Justin. You also have the next item, 9, which is consideration of an order in the matter of the reappointment of members to the Tillamook County Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
Yes, so we've had a few members' terms expire as of December 31st. I believe we had 5 members who are up for term renewal. They are 3-year terms, if I'm remembering right. And so our chair was up for renewal, Ken Henson, who's agreed to serve another term, who's a very valuable resource to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. We do appreciate him being part of it. And Justin Knopf, who represents the dairy industry. He's the sustainability manager at the Tillamook Creamery. So he's brought a great perspective to the SWAC there. And so those 2 members have agreed to serve another term. As I said, they've been invaluable. This will get us back over the threshold to have a quorum, which should be 5 members. Because of that, in consultation with Ken Henson, we decided to cancel the January meeting. Just during the holidays, I wasn't getting responses from them and for reappointments, and so it just kind of dragged on, unfortunately. So we're on track for a February meeting with Commissioner Olson reaching out and hoping to attend. So we'll be happy to have you there in February. But yeah, those 2 individuals have served one or multiple terms, and they've been valuable asset to the SWAC committee. So we'd ask for the reapproval. And we're also putting out a press release for the 3 vacant positions, the timber industry, the public at large, and the construction industry. So if anyone out there is hoping to serve, we'd love to have you. I believe they're going to be a press release coming out, an application process, but we do have 3 vacant seats that we're hoping to fill on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. But I would ask if you have any questions regarding the 2 reappointments.
Thank you. Commissioner?
I have no questions. As always, we are exceptionally thankful for those who are willing to serve on our advisory committees. These are volunteers who are providing just a critical voice of our community into the operations of what we do. So very thankful that Ken Henson and Justin Knopf are willing to be reappointed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. My only comment is, as we've said so many times, there wouldn't be a lot of stuff that gets done in Tillamook County if we didn't have volunteers. We just would be sort of drifting in the wind, I think. So I appreciate that. And I think you've got 2 good candidates and they both have served before, so they just hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Likewise, I am grateful for their willingness to continue to serve. And I'll just say to your point about 3 vacancies that the Tillamook County Solid Waste Advisory Committee is very interesting. It's more interesting than I would have known prior to being a commissioner. There's a lot of important work that is done by that committee, and I learned a lot from being liaison to the committee and to attending the meetings and to hear about the needs of individual industries in terms of solid waste in Tillamook County. It is again, I'm repeating myself, it is interesting and important because, it's something that unless you're involved in it, you're probably not thinking about what happens to our waste, but it's very important. So I encourage folks from the timber, construction, and member at large. Okay, timber industry, construction industry, and member at large to consider applying for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, which meets monthly generally. Do you want to speak to the what that means to be a member?
Yeah, commitments. So we do meet, it's monthly for about the first 6 months as we're ramping up for budgets, and then it goes to every other month. So I believe it's 8 or 9 annual meetings from 3 to 5. Typically, we're done around 4:30. There is also a Solid Waste Advisory, well, different name, but Budget Committee for Solid Waste, where I think we have some vacancies as well. So that's something that could potentially be an opportunity as well if someone's really savvy with numbers to join that committee. And so, yeah, not a huge commitment. The agenda goes out about a week before. Usually review that and just bring any questions and engaging thoughts to the meeting once a month. So happy to entertain any applications.
Thank you. I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of Board Order number 24-005 and Solid Waste Service District Order number 24-001 in the matter of the reappointment of members to the Tillamook County Solid Waste Advisory Committee, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you so much, Justin. Thanks for joining us in person. Okay, so Rachel, I'd like to check in with you. We have a public hearing that was scheduled for 10. Do you recommend moving into that now or completing our agenda before we do?
We don't typically move up public hearings, but we could at the board's discretion, at the chair's discretion.
Okay. I just noticed the our guest for the public hearing had popped on in a timely way. And so I'll just check in with Heidi Reed. Are you able to, do you have the time to wait for us to finish, to move through our agenda? We have 4 more items on our agenda.
I have time to wait if we need to, or we can do it now. It's entirely up to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, commissioners, do we have a preference?
Totally indifferent. We're going to hear it one way or another, but
Okay. Well, let's just move through the agenda and then take up the public hearing at the end. Heidi, thank you for your patience.
You're welcome.
All right, item 10 is consideration of the adoption of the recommended non-represented salary schedule and benefit changes. With us, we have Jody Wilson, Director of HR, I believe.
And Jody's on the phone today. She is still in a Spectrum. Oh, maybe she's back. She said she is still in a Spectrum outage. Are you back online, Jody?
I am back online.
Yay.
I am sorry for the struggle we have. Southern Oregon's internet is shipped up to Eugene and then shipped back down to Southern Oregon. So we talk about the unique things that everyone has. And there was a line cut in Eugene. So we keep having a Spectrum outage over the last few days. So welcome. Thank you for reviewing our staff reports. They have been a struggle to get to you, and I think everyone in Tillamook is also struggling with weather and emergency responses. So I think the show must go on. The first board report that was provided included a recommendation and consideration for our non-rep employees to follow the COLA, or the cost of living increase that was ratified in the AFSCME contract. That was a 2% COLA for January 1 of 2024 and a 3% COLA for July 1 of 2024. There were also a few benefit changes that were included with that for staff. That included a retirement, grandfathering our current retirement, putting new non-represented employees into PERS as of July 1 of 2024. They would be moved to a separate pay plan that would be grossing up their contributions for their PERS contributions that's required of PERS. There are proposed deductible adjustment as of July 1 of 2025, that medical plan deductible would be increased from $500 to $1,000. There is a one-time $500 contribution to an HRA VEBA to help offset that. I will say that when we were working with AFSCME, we did some analysis, and less than 1/3 of our staff actually hit that deductible. So we'll talk more about that during our renewal, and we bring this forward to get our renewal this year. But we did do some analysis for those employees and the impact of that change. And again, we're generally just following the AFSCME contract with these proposed changes. So our non-reps and AFSCME mirror each other. In the AFSCME contract, there was one other change regarding vacation. Vacation is currently limited to not being able to use it in your first 6 months of employment. That is your probationary period. We adjusted that time down to line up with sick leave. So sick leave you can use on your 91st day. And so rather than having to wait to access that time, if you have a sick leave event, you can access both your vacation and your sick. We do encourage employees to watch their attendance during their 6 months probationary period, but it becomes a hardship if an employee does happen to become ill during that time period. So we did align those two dates. Couple more bullets here. Sick leave, with the enactment of Oregon sick leave in September of 2023, we removed the availability of sick leave for leave donation. Our donation program stays intact, but those that are donating and receiving will be able to receive vacation, not the sick leave, if that makes sense for the change, because we're giving away something that those employees in the catastrophic event could be using Oregon sick leave if they would qualify. Last couple recommendations is there was a change for those departments that do require a 4-10 shift. We have many employees who voluntarily elect a 4-10 shift or an alternate schedule. In those departments that require that 4-10 or alternate schedule, it does allow the county to pay holiday for the full scheduled day. So we just had MLK Day. With that, those employees that were required to work a 4-10 would receive 10 hours of holiday instead of 8. If an employee elects voluntarily, or the department elects to voluntarily run those 10-hour shifts, they would be paid 8 hours. So it's a little different in how that works, of whether it's a requirement or an option. So we are looking to align our personnel policies similar. And the last part, I'm going to go back to salary, is we looked at 71 job classifications of non-rep. Of those 71, 66% were within the 5% of the market. We did identify 5 classifications. One is vacant for a market adjustment. Those are listed. We have the environmental health program manager, the engineering project manager. That's some of those vacancies that Chris was talking about in a prior agenda item. We've been trying really hard to get that position filled for him. We continue to work on that. It started out as a supervisor, and we are adjusting that to a project manager or an engineering project manager to help Chris oversee that engineering division. As you well know, Chris is pulled in a lot of different directions and trying to kind of help backfill him where he's not acting as the county engineer on a regular basis, as well as the public works director. The assistant chief deputy DA, the county surveyor, as well as the human resources director. And so those were identified as a market adjustment for those that were plus and minus, for those that were minus 5% or greater. With that, are there any questions regarding the non-rep recommendations for the COLA and the market adjustments today?
Commissioners? No questions for me. I think it has been a historical precedent in Tillamook County to have the non-rep, and I assume that means non-rep and what is executive service as well. So it is everyone that is not currently represented by a union, correct, Jody?
That is correct. The one part I just want to clarify is there is a group of non-representatives in the Sheriff's Department. They're on a separate pay plan called the Justice Facility. That work group, so that is your lieutenants, your undersheriff, and your sergeants. That particular pay plan generally follows the Teamsters and is not included in this particular recommendation, but there are 2 non-reps on this pay plan. I believe it's the office manager, and there is one more over there. I think they do some accounting. I'm gonna misrepresent what Jana does over there. Both Rhonda and Jana are on the non-rep pay plan. The Justice Facility is those, I call them certified non-reps over at the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Having two unions as well as folks who are not represented by unions at the county creates a complex structure of pay. So I appreciate the clarity as to who follows whom. So we appreciate the AFSCME bargaining that took place. We know that contract took a lot of time and energy and folks really understanding the world position that the county is in, as well as the inflationary world everyone's living in. And I think a good bargain was struck, and I think it makes sense to have our non-represented follow that same structure.
No, thank you. Excuse me, Madam Chair. I would agree with what Commissioner Scar has said as well. When I look at across Tillamook County, I'm impressed with the depth of the types of work. We've got people who carry guns, we've got people who drive big trucks and need commercial licenses, we've got engineers, we've got a lot of medical personnel, and how you get all that wrapped up into one way forward, it always amazes me, but I believe this is a wonderful step forward. And I also believe it achieves a measure of equity and fairness across the organization as well. So I'm in full support of what's been done, and I appreciate, even before I sat in this chair, that I was invited to keep up to speed on some of the negotiations, and I've been through a few of those in the past, and I would say the county has handled it very ethically, very upright, and we've gotten to a point where it makes a great deal of sense. The only thing I can say is all of this in 18 months will probably be out of date because the world changes. But nonetheless, as where we sit today, I'm in full support, and I think a good job has been done by all, including the union folks who represent their interests as well.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. I think this is historically, this is what we've done for non-represented folks. And B, it's equitable, it's fair and reasonable. A lot of non-represented folks have been with the county for a long time, and we want them to feel valued and appreciated, and we want our employees to understand that we care about them, and we care about retention. We care that they want to continue to work for the county, and regardless of the fact that they're not represented by a union, we want to take care of them in a similar way that we're taking care of our other employees. So I'm fully supportive. I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay, and okay. So in consideration of the adoption of the recommended non-represented salary schedule and benefit changes, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Jody. You have the next item as well. Item 11, consideration of the adoption of recommended cost of living agreement for elected officials.
Thank you, Chair. This is kind of a going back to last year. We had an elected official compensation committee. We reviewed the elected officials for the 5% market adjustment. We brought that before the then elected official compensation committee, which thank you, Commissioner Olson, you were a part of back then. At the time, we did look at our elected officials and whether they were at market. And we determined that we weren't going to provide the 5% market adjustment, but there was a secondary recommendation in that staff report to state that our elected officials should follow with the county COLAs to keep that market trend in place. What happens is if we overlook our elected officials in providing cost of living with our other staff, we create compression, and we kind of create this boomerang effect for taking care of our elected officials. And so what'll happen is then they'll significantly lag, and then there'll be a catch up. And so with this particular recommendation and for your consideration today, we're asking to keep our elected officials with our non-reps and moving along So when we're here in a year or 6 months or 8 months, we don't have that significant lag and are asking for a larger increase with our elected officials. It makes it very difficult to ask. And so I'd like to be able to keep those two moving along as part of our compensation philosophy, unless at some point there's data that says different. But right now, we know that all of our jurisdictions are moving with a very similar COLA and sometimes even larger. And so we have made the recommendation to ask for your consideration for the elected officials to move forward. In my staff report, the original emailed staff report said January 17th, 2023. It should say January 17th, 2024, and I'll resubmit the new one for the record. I do apologize. Two other parts of that recommendation is asking for the consideration for our newly elected officials coming on board on or after July 1 of 2024 to, again, sunset or grandfather the current retirement plan for our current elected officials, but they would be going to PERS, very similar to our new employees. And we would also gross up the appropriate salary to compensate them for their required 6% PERS. And also adopt the health plan change that we would be moving forward with on July 1 of 2025. Do we have any questions from the board today?
Commissioner?
No questions. I think this can be seen as a touchy topic, so we'll just call that out as the elephant in the room, because it always appears as if the commissioners are sitting here giving ourselves a raise because we, in essence, are approving that ability to move with the remainder of our staff. So it's always a good time, I think, to remind people that while we are elected officials, there are the 3 county commissioners, along with your treasurer, your sheriff, your assessor, and your county clerk are your elected officials. And while we are elected officials, we also are full-time employees of the county. There are other counties where your elected officials are not full-time employees. There are counties where your elected officials are full-time employees, but also have a full-time administrator. We are one where we are full-time employees without a full-time administrator. We oversee county departments. In fact, Commissioner Bell is currently serving as the interim director of parks in the absence of a park director. I believe she previously served as the interim director of HR before we hired an HR director. She seems to have drawn the short straw on departments this last couple of years. But what I point that out is we are full-time employees, and that compression conversation is an important conversation for the commissioners and all elected officials. Every one of our elected officials is a department head. They oversee staff, they oversee operations, they are a working director. So it's important in our HR world to make sure that we maintain that equity across all areas of the county, and that includes our department heads, which in 6 cases happens to also be elected officials. There was a time historically where commissioners declined the COLAs and raises, and it put the county in a very awkward position for a future board of commissioners who were then out of step, and the compression was significant, and they gave themselves a catch-up COLA at a time when AFSCME and Teamsters were not receiving those COLAs, and it created a huge discord in the community. So really, if we were to look at the best way to do this, I believe that it is for us to stay in step with the remainder of our staff as they receive cost of living adjustments, recognizing that we are full-time employees of the county as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair Bell. My first comment is really a question for council. I've served prior to my being here as the chair of the compensation committee for a good many years. And I'm very, very familiar with what our HR person pointed out occurred last year in our discussions and deliberations. So I support, I think Commissioner Scar summed it up very, very well in terms of the current situation. But let me ask council, should I vote on this matter, or what can you advise me as we discuss it further and consider a vote? Well, I'll be pleased to vote on it. I do support it. And I will say just for the record, what the compensation committee deliberated without benefit of the three commissioners back then was not carried forward in total, because every year we've tried to remedy some of the inequities that Commissioner Scar pointed out, that if you don't keep some measure of equity and parity across the organization, you develop what's known as compression, and people, it gets out of, I would say, alignment, where people who supervise others ordinarily earn a little bit more than the person that they supervise. And that's not necessarily the case in Tillamook County as of the moment, nor do I see that being corrected as we go forward. But this is a good first step, and I think it's fair and equitable, and basically it treats everybody the same. So, council, if you're okay, then I'll stay with it and vote if that's okay with the others. So, all right, thank you.
I agree with my colleagues that I think this is a fair and equitable approach. I wouldn't support elected officials getting a higher rate of COLA than our AFSCME employees. And I do support elected officials getting the same rate of COLA as our AFSCME employees. I think it's, I just think it's reasonable. And I think also, you know, we've already said this, but it's also worth noting that we declined the 5% raise that we gave everybody else last year. And that was a decision that the seated board made unanimously. However, you know, I heard from other elected officials their concerns about the decision. So when we're making this decision, we have the weight of this decision for all of the elected officials. And you know, we're not just thinking about ourselves, we're thinking about all of the county elected officials. And you know, it's we have to take care of elected officials as well as employed staff. We have to, because otherwise people wouldn't run for these jobs. So I just think it's reasonable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other piece of this, and I think Commissioner Olson could speak to this from his time on the compensation committee, as could I. I spent 2 years on the compensation committee prior to becoming a county commissioner. And one of the things that Commissioner Olson, as the chair of that committee, had called for repeatedly was a wage and comp study, with the intention of making sure that everyone was in alignment, and then included elected officials. And that wage and comp study for elected officials was completed in the first round. It is due to be looked at, I believe, a little bit more deeply in this next year. So Jody, is that correct, that elected officials compensation study piece will be looked at a little more deeply? It was challenging. Every county is different. You've heard us say many times, when you've seen one county, you've seen one county. And so I think there's to be a deeper dive to make sure that we are in fact compensating our elected officials where they need to be in comparison to other counties of similar work.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do think right now we're in a challenging place. We did move the COLA forward, but we do not have a current elected official compensation committee. So I couldn't roll into 2024, go out and look at the market and make a full recommendation. So what I did bring forth is what I did have under the authority of the prior compensation committee, in hopes that that adjustment that we would bring forward would be less so. I do want to point out, we did have a market adjustment we had made a recommendation for on our treasurer that also didn't get moved forward. So we probably anticipate that's going to look a little bit further off than it was previously. But as soon as we get a new compensation committee together, we'll take a look at that and bring this forward.
Thank you. And to that front, we are doing interviews currently for the budget committee, which has traditionally also served, the lay people on the budget committee have also served as that compensation committee. So we're in the process of seating that committee. But I think it's good to bring that to light at the moment as well. We are making adjustments based on market studies in AFSCME, market studies in non-rep. We are moving forward into bargaining with Teamsters, where we expect a similar approach may be taken. And so there may be a return to that for elected officials in the budgeting bargaining process, assuming we have a seated compensation committee. So I think it's important to daylight that as we continue these conversations.
Right. I think we're ready for motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, consideration of the adoption of recommended cost of living agreement for elected officials. I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Item 12 is consideration of transient lodging tax grant agreement number 2023-P3 with the Pacific City Nestucca Valley Chamber of Commerce for tourism-related projects. Rachel Haggerty, Chief of Staff.
Good morning.
Good day, Commissioner. Again, before you do that, I'll ask council if I can participate in this since I'm currently on the board of the chamber in question here and have participated and can give you all kinds of background and prepared the budget and have worked with Rachel over the years and had some success and not always successful either when she needed something additional. But I'd be more than happy to participate in this. But again, I'll turn to council should I vote and participate or not.
Sure. Chamber is not for profit.
It's a 501c6, not for profit. Yes.
Do not have conflict.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Rachel told me to talk. You don't have a conflict, in my opinion, Commissioner Olson.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I would like Doug to explain more about the visitor center though, so I will be calling on you for that information, Commissioner. So before you is a grant agreement to provide $25,000 to the Pacific City Nestucca Valley Chamber of Commerce. The board has elected in the past to provide an annual allocation to certain entities that provide certain tourism services, and you've identified the chamber as one of those. So they have generally received about $25,000 on an annual basis, and before you is another $25,000 for fiscal year 23-24. With each agreement, we ask the chamber to come up with a scope of what they anticipate to be spending the $25,000 on. This year, they are proposing to use it toward furthering the development and operation of the South Tillamook County Visitors Interaction Center, which would be located at the Kiowanda Center. They have a detailed description here, but would offer Vice Chair Olson to describe it in his words, if he would like to, what this visitor center would be.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Chair. The chamber down in Pacific City, which is one of several in Tillamook County, has been around since the 1950s, and it is, as I mentioned earlier, a 501c6, properly set up under the laws of Oregon and state of Oregon and federal tax law, and we file an annual return. Back about 20 some years ago, it merged with the Nestucca Valley Chamber, and since then it's been operating as the Pacific City Nestucca Valley Chamber of Commerce. 10 or 12 years ago, we had an office both in Pacific City, it happened to be on my property and my business, and another in Cloverdale. And at that time, we were in a position to hire some part-time personnel. Manager, I guess, was the title we used. And that person worked part-time principally in the Cloverdale office because it was on Highway 101, and there was a fair amount of drop-in business and things went well. And then after about the third one, we realized that we weren't offering enough money and it wasn't full-time and it was becoming increasingly difficult to find staff. So we dropped that position and we actually moved the office then over to Pacific City and closed the one in Cloverdale. And then shortly thereafter, we got into the pandemic, which, as everyone would recall, people treaded water for several years and really didn't move forward. We were lucky to keep the doors open and keep our major events going, although I think we basically didn't do much for Dory Days one of the years, and a banquet that we do every year turned into a luncheon. But anyway, now that we've come out of that and back headed in a good, strong direction, what this provides is this money, together with other funds that the chamber generates, would fund a visitor center at the Kayawanda Community Center, which is really the heart of Pacific City and also a major go-to place for all of South County. And there's some directional signage out on 101 directing people into Pacific City. For the last 2 years, since we really got back up to speed from the pandemic, we have an office in that building, but it was not always open, nor was it accessible, and it didn't really serve the traveling public or locals because there was nobody there. We did have a phone and a website, but in more recent times, the Kayawanda Community Center has upped their game, and they're able to provide matching funds, which together with this will provide for a full-time person who has been hired and is on the payroll, and the payroll is being administered by the Kayawanda Community Center. So quarterly, the chamber would reimburse the costs, including the matching FICA and all of that, to the Kayawanda Community Center. This person would manage and arrange for and help market for events at the center, and would also be there during certain hours for the traveling public who would come in and ask, where do we stay overnight? Where do we, what can we do while we're here? What should we do? The individual we've hired is named Amanda Graves. Some of you may know her. She's a very, very capable, educated individual who is so far has stepped up and done a lot of good things for the chamber. And so what this agreement will do will satisfy the chamber's obligation for this particular person. And what I think it will do for Tillamook County is, Tillamook County is 75 miles long. And people in Manzanita and the north end, they may or may not come to the south and vice versa. So when people come up from Highway 101, one of the first things I suspect they look for is where to stay overnight or where to eat or where to find out something about the area or how to take a dory boat ride. And now we'll actually have a human being who can respond to that and point them in the right direction or offer some alternatives, much as the Tillamook Chamber does here. There's some staff there. And so this is a big step up for the chamber in Pacific City, and this agreement will help pay for it. I might add some of the funds that have come in recently to the Kayawanda Community Center. Facebook, I think, when they came, I developed a cable landing station, or not, a cable landing actually, in Tierra del Mar. After some period of time and getting on the wrong side of people, opened their checkbook, and I think they gave $20,000 to the Kayawanda Community Center. And the community center, now that the pandemic is going away, not gone, but going away, they've stepped up their game in terms of marketing. I believe this individual will go to the wedding shows in the Willamette Valley and begin to solicit business. So it's good for everybody, because tourism is a very integral part of what is offered for employment in Tillamook County. It's a major source, as we all know, of the lodging tax. And so this helps advance that program. And I can tell you from 20 some years in that business myself, there is no substitute for a personal connection. You can look on the internet all you want and look at your phone until you go blind, but eventually you'll need to talk to a human being. And that's what this does. Brings in a person who's knowledgeable, personable, and can advance tourism interests and the community use of the Kayawanda Community Center. So this is half of it, and I'll be happy to answer a question or two if I can from my colleagues or anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. It's ready for your consideration.
Well, that's an exciting change. I think that's a terrific use of the funds.
Agreed. I think this would be fabulous.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of transient lodging tax TLT grant agreement number 2023-P3 with the Pacific City Nestucca Valley Chamber of Commerce for tourism-related projects, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. And item 13 is consideration of Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act of 2000 certification of Title III expenditures by participating county. Again, Rachel, hey.
Tillamook County receives generally on an annual basis throughout the year, funding from the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act of 2000. We call it these Title III dollars, and they're basically funding that we receive from the from the federal government to offset some of the costs, some of the revenues that we used to receive from harvest on federal lands. The funding that we receive can only be used toward four uses. One is activities under the Firewise Communities Program with the intent of providing homeowners in fire-sensitive areas with education and assistance to reduce the risk of wildfires. This is the Oregon Department of Forestry's yard debris program. Second is search and rescue and other emergency services, including firefighting and law enforcement patrols on federal land as defined in the Act. Training costs and equipment purchases directly related to those emergency services I just described, and the development and carrying out community wildfire protection plans. The last one has been completed. So every time we have funding that comes into the county fund from the federal government, we do a solicitation that is required by the Act to solicit projects that essentially go towards the ODF yard debris program or search and rescue on federal lands. So those are the uses. With that, the Act also requires that the board certify annually how we have expended those funds. So before you today is a form that we are required to fill out that describes that. In walking through the form, the description of the monies is a little confusing. And so after a lot of description, I'll just give my own words on what these boxes mean. So the first amount that I've put for $75,468.71 is the balance that the board has not allocated to a specific project. So we have a cash balance of around $142,000. We have outstanding grants, and that is the balance that we will likely be doing a solicitation here shortly. The next value under expenditures is $49,000. That is how much we spent last year in reimbursing toward our outstanding grants for the Firewise program. So that money was provided to ODF. The amount of $56,003.66 is the amount that we have reimbursed the sheriff's office towards the outstanding grants that went toward the sheriff's office Raptor and one of the Tough books. And then at the bottom, $105,003.66 is just the total of the 49 and the 56. So that is the total expenditures that actually went out and paid for costs last calendar year, 2023. So that is ready for your consideration to be signed by Chair Bell.
Thank you, Rachel. Do you have any questions, comments?
It is a confusing form, Rachel,
It's awful.
because the last line of it says funds not spent or obligated, which is theoretically would be the same as the remaining unspent unobligated balance from the year being reported above, except that it's not.
Exactly. Yeah, I've been told that basically if we have it and we have plans to use it, then that should be a zero,
Right.
or we run into issues.
So anybody online
Yes.
looking at this particular item,
Very
if that
confusing.
doesn't make sense, please know that it doesn't make sense, but it's a federal form. So that might explain why it doesn't make sense. So I don't have any questions. Thank you.
No, I'm good with going forward. Thank you.
Well, I think these are great uses of the funds, and it is a convoluted process we have to go through for sure, and I appreciate you navigating it for us. Yes, I think we're ready for motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act of 2000 certification of Title III expenditures by participating county, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, now do we need a break before the public hearing?
I think it'll be very quick.
It'll be
Yeah.
quick. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Thank you,
right.
though.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we do have a 10 a.m. public hearing. Again, I thank Heidi Reed for her patience. We will recess our board meeting at,
No,
nope, sorry.
I would just move on to the agenda item and read the agenda item, and I'll give a staff report, and then we'll move into a public hearing.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, so the agenda item 14 is concerning dissolving the Beaver Water District in Tillamook County.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On August 18th, 2023, Tillamook County received a letter from the Secretary of State informing us that the Beaver Water District has failed to file 3 consecutive years of financial reports. What that means is pursuant to ORS 198-345 sub 1, the Tillamook County Board of Commissioners are required to initiate dissolution proceedings. And I've said this before at the hearings, and you've also commented as well. The board does not intend or desire to dissolve the Beaver Water District, but this is a statutory process that you are required to adhere to. Upon receipt of that letter, I began discussions with the Beaver Water District staff and tried to get an update on their resolution in meeting the statutory requirements. After about a month of back and forth at that time, it appeared that there was no progress being made or that there would be any progress forthcoming. And so the board had to initiate the dissolution proceedings. On October 4th, the board executed an order that formally initiated those proceedings, and that is a statutory step. And in that board order, a public hearing was established for November 1st. Between the board executing the order and formally initiating the dissolution proceedings and the public hearing, the district made a staff change, and that staff person, Heidi Reed, who is with us today, has made a lot of headway and progress in resolving this matter and getting the district up to compliance with statutory requirements. At the November 1st public hearing, we heard those updates, and it was very clear that they were in fact making progress. During the hearing, ORS 198-360 requires that after that hearing, if the county board finds that the district is in fact operating as an active district or that there is a need for the district, the board shall continue the hearing. The board did find that to be true and continued the hearing to provide the district additional time to come into compliance. At the November 1st hearing, the board continued the public hearing to today, January 17th at 10 a.m. And so I will leave, I think I will just stop there and let Heidi during the public hearing provide an update on behalf of the district, and then we can discuss it further after that. So that concludes my staff report, and I will let Chair Bell open the public hearing and begin with Ms. Reed in providing an update.
Terrific. We will open the public hearing at 10:48 a.m. and invite Heidi Reed to give us a water district report.
Good morning. So at this point, I have managed to get 5 of the 7 reports that were required completed. We do have fiscal year end 22 and fiscal year end 23 that need to have a financial review completed. Finding a CPA for that's been a little difficult. I have been in contact with one kind of since the beginning of all this happened, and he has agreed at this point. I spoke to him 2 days ago. He's agreed at this point to look at the financials for the district and decide whether or not he wants to move forward. I have sent him the information he requested. So I'm currently kind of waiting for that to happen, him to get back to me and see if he's even going to do it. In the meantime, I'm going to be sending out further emails to other CPAs to see if I can actually get somebody to commit. If Peter Gelser with Mid-Valley CPAs, who I've contacted, if he commits to doing these, he said he will not be able to get them done until probably June-ish of this year, because they're just that backed up. They're going into tax season. We're not the priority. So I'm still going to keep looking, still keep working on it at this point, because I did turn in fiscal year end 21, which was what prompted the dissolution in the first place. I've spoke with Amy John now at the Secretary of State's office, and she has said because we did get that report in, we're no longer in the dissolution process with the Secretary of State's office, but I still have to do the next 2 reports, which I'm working on hopefully getting those done in the next few months, but I don't know for sure. And that's kind of where we're at this point with it, playing the waiting game.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you for your work and thank you for that report.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, do you have questions for, sorry,
No, continue.
questions for Heidi? Please.
Thank you for the work you've done. I don't think I've met you personally, but I understand that you've been doing this for a while. And just as a side note, I had a Zoom, well, actually a Teams call yesterday with the new director of COPAC after our internet got back up. As a coincidence, he mentioned that there is a significant shortage of certified public accountants or others at that level in Oregon and Washington. And for whatever reason, he was trying to locate a couple, and he'd even thought about advancing funds from COPAC in some form to people who were in the process of choosing that career. So I hear your dilemma. And I appreciate that. But my question is, you're out by your own statement. You're out like another 3 to 4, maybe 5 months to get this done. Has the Secretary of State's office specifically said that's okay, or have you established a timeline with them or an understanding? Or I'm not clear how that works with the state. Could you speak to that a little bit?
I have been in close contact with the Secretary of State's office throughout all of this and the whole process. And I've spoke with Amy multiple times. We spoke last week regarding the situation that we're in, and they are aware that trying to find a CPA to do these financial reviews is difficult. A lot of them on the list have quit doing them because they're just so cumbersome and they have their own stuff to do. So they do know, she does know that it's probably not going to be done until the end of this fiscal year. They are aware of that. And it's just a matter, when I talked to her, she said, just keep in contact with them. If I find somebody to do it sooner, great. If not, I'll give them an update as soon as I can figure out what's going on. But they are fully aware of the situation on both counts of it not getting done as soon as we would like it to, and on the fact that I may have to look for a different CPA to do it.
Could you get some kind of a paper trail on that, or a recognition on Secretary of State letterhead that the district has until a certain time to complete the activity? Is that likely? You could do that just for everybody's protection?
Yeah, I can give her a call or send her an email and ask her for some kind of a letter stating that we're okay with it.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Just thank you very much, Heidi, for your work on this. I know that's the systems of the state are not easy to navigate, and they're really not built for the small types of systems that we operate in Tillamook County. They really assume that you are operating some very large business of water that has lots of staff and a lot more, I think, chutzpah than we have here. So I appreciate your work on it, and I understand the delay. I think that we've had our own challenges in a variety of areas with finding CPAs. I'm on the board of a nonprofit, it's a large nonprofit, 5-county region. The CPA recently told us they would not be coming back. So, and they're struggling to find one for this fiscal year. So it's definitely a challenge that's very real on a lot of fronts and a lot of scales out there. So
Thank you. So, Rachel, I think we need to ask for your recommendation. Should we close the public hearing first?
Yes, please.
Okay, then we will close this public hearing at 10:54 a.m.
we should have asked if there was anybody else, but I don't think that there is. Sorry.
I was
Yeah.
assuming there was
Yes.
no one else to give public comment.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So my recommendation is, we may be in a position where we can terminate the dissolution proceedings, but because of the events of the last week, I've been unable to confirm with the Secretary of States if they are in fact in compliance. So I was going to request that of them myself following today. Given that, I would recommend that we continue, I think we have two options. We can continue the hearing to 2 different dates. One would be another 2.5 months, which is the length that you've already continued it, which would put us to around April 3rd at 10 a.m. Or we can set a date at the end of June, which presumably there would be an audit completed. So I think either would work. We could be in the same boat where we just open up a hearing on April 3rd and continue it again, or we may just be able to conclude it at that time if we receive something from the Secretary of State saying they have met the requirements. They're still outstanding on requirements, but at least they've met the need that triggers they've met the threshold that triggers the initiation of dissolution. So I guess, long story short, I would recommend the April 3rd because we may be fine to just terminate instead of having this drag out till June.
I think
Bill?
that's a good idea too. I'm not even, I mean, if we can get some sort of confirmation from the Secretary of State, we may be able to just, take it off calendar somehow. I'm not sure, but certainly, well, it appears from a non-decision making seat that they're making progress towards getting it
Sure.
resolved. So that gives you the statutory ability to continue the hearing.
Okay, Commissioner?
I would like to see the sooner than later, only we may be up against a really tight timeline if we were to defer it. So I would agree with the recommendations that something happen in April, at least come up as a update or something on our agenda that they're making progress or that staff has contacted the Secretary of State's office, and rather than have the whole thing be dumped on the table in June.
Thank you.
Seems a more prudent way to go. Thank you.
So Chair Bell, if that is the recommendation of the board, I would offer a motion that is in the matter of dissolving the Beaver Water District. The hearing continued to today. January 17th is further continued to April 3rd at 10 a.m.
Thank you.
Period.
And I say so moved.
I think so.
Yes.
So moved.
And I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Passes.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi.
You're welcome.
All right. And thank you, Rachel. At this point, we are at item 16, board concerns.
Done for me today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nothing here. Looking forward to our work session this afternoon.
Indeed. Okay, I'll read about that. Item 17 is board announcements. The commissioners will hold a board briefing on Wednesday, January 17th, 2024 from 2 to 3 p.m. to conduct candidate interviews for the Tillamook County Budget Committee, and from 3 to 4 p.m. to discuss commissioner updates. The meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The conference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. And with that, we will adjourn at 10:58 a.m.